Hello, it's Stephanie Washer again. I'm going to go over client server applications, module 1-2 from Network Plus Guide to Networks, the in Cengage MindTap, PCT 110. So I'm going to go through this. I already talked a little bit about network services. So any client server applications, there might be quite a few of them. A lot of them are network services. So all of the resources that you can refer to are network services. And any applications that you need information from. So it has at least 2 endpoints involved. So anything over 2 endpoints. So like your computer, your smartphone, printer, any phone, not even smartphone. It could also be IP, your IP telephone, voice over IP telephone. So it could be a lot of different things. So anytime there's multiple requests, so you have over 2 items, then it's a client server application. So we have that example that I went over in the previous video. And so the network services, here are all the different network services. And those, they're down here. These are all web services. Whenever you're working with any network devices, you need rules to tell the computers or devices how to handle the information, how it's going to request the web page, how it's going to bring up the information on the other side. So it just makes it so that everybody can communicate. Everyone's on the same, it has the same knowledge, and that everyone can communicate. So Macs can communicate effectively with PCs, iPhones, and Android devices. They all can get on that network. So, and the hardware, operating systems, applications, all computers, everything has to be involved in this protocol. So the protocol are just the rules on how to communicate over the web. So we're going to go over the OSI model and the TCP/IP suite of protocols. So we're going to go over some things that talk about these protocols in depth, and we're going to go over a couple of them. So the web service ones are the easiest to talk about, and you can always, HTTP, it's what whenever we share a website, that's what comes up. It should be HTTPS. It should be the secure version versus HTTP, but this is how you communicate over the web. And so how web browsers, they're going to use that information to communicate. Then HTTP has other, like encryption and other things that it puts with it. So we have secure sockets layer and the transport security layer, so SSL or TLS. And then that gives us that HTTP secure. So we work with this and then SSL and TLS to get the HTTPS. So you have a secure transmission. And you can always look, there's, you can look up and see if most of the time it's going to be HTTPS anymore. You don't generally see just HTTP. Most web servers, so anytime you see you're not going to really see a web server, but anytime you're touching a web server, you'll probably be using Apache. So apache.org, let me open this in the new tab. It's software that you can use for internet, for the web server. So you can look up Apache and you can see those web server applications. So you can look up Apache and you can look up our Nginx. So you can look up at both of those. And I just right click and hit to go to them. So you can, and they're just APIs. So these are open source software and they run on Linux. So open source is just free code. So it's out there, available, publicly available for people to use. So when we talk about not copying code, basically, these are open source and we are given permission by the people that made it to be able to use their source code. So that's it. Sometimes, I always think open source is synonymous with free, but it's not always the case because some versions of Linux are not free, but they use the open source code. So Apache and Nginx are free and open source. So there is a lot of free open source because people want to make things, there's some great people out there that create great products and they provide them open source. Internet Information Services is embedded into the Windows Server operating system, not necessarily open source, but you get it free with the Windows Server operating system. Same with Hyper-V. That's the other thing is that sometimes they're embedded with the operating system, and it may be cheaper to run it on with those items than, but there's still a little bit of a cost to it, right? Okay. So here's just an example where you can see we've got the padlock icon, and then you can see that it's HTTPS. So you can click up here and see mine's got the link, and if you click on that little circle, it says the connection is secure, and you can see that it's secure, that there's a valid certificate, and you can see my general settings too. We've got email services. So SMTP is a simple mail transfer protocol for email. We also have POP3 or POP3 and IMAP4. So we've got Post Office Protocol version 3 and Internet Message Access Protocol version 4. So we have a whole bunch of different email services. And POP3 is just downloaded. So if you download it to your computer, that's what you use is that. IMAP is what we use for all of our smartphones and stuff because everything's still stored on that server. And obviously we still have SSL or TLS for security purposes. And then we've got domain name system. So everything has an IP address, everything. And we don't necessarily see that everything has an IP address. So ng.cengage.com, it's actually a computer that has an IP address. So instead of having to remember that IP address, we have what's called a domain name system that is set up in order for us to be able to just type in google.com or cisco.com or cengage.com. So we don't have to worry about that because we have DNS running, or somebody, internet providers have DNS running, and so that we can do that. Anytime you transfer files, you can use the FTP or file transfer protocol. Sometimes, most of the stuff you do and you don't realize that it's working in the background. There's so many things working in the background that we don't realize that make our life easy. So the file transfer protocol working in the background, you can see there's FTP clients like the FileZilla client or Qt FTP. So those are some file transfer. And it has more features than a browser. I've used FileZilla for years. I'll open this up here. FileZilla is something I use for years. I download the client. I don't use the server part, but I use the client part, and I can upload it to a server easily. So if you're creating web pages, that's one that I can easily upload web pages to a file server if I need to. And then they have a note, encrypted file transfer protocol is S for secure FTP. So that's it's got the SSH protocol with it. And then there's database services. We have a whole class on database management that Jenny Kunkel is teaching right now in the spring semester. And so we have, it's just a full, it's its own area is database management. And so it's just software that is installed on a database server, and people make requests for many different things. So depending on what they need, like at Rock Valley College, we have a lot of student information, a ton of it, right? So when we try and query or make reports, then we need to make sure we ask for the right parameters to get the report we want. So that's part of it is tapping into that database and getting the report we want. So you want to be able to view and report, and then maybe later you want to be able to view it in a way that you can understand it. And then if you want to give it to others, of course, they're going to need to understand it too. So we've got database management system, which is the software that's on the database server. Then SQL is the structured query language. So we call it SQL or SQL. So that is the programming language used by database management administrators. And then, we've got, different versions. So MySQL, Oracle database, Microsoft SQL Server. So there's many different things that we can use. And then remote access. If we need to get or remote in, Telnet, you're not going to be using Telnet because, it transmits the information, but it's not encrypted. So you are not going to use it. It's been replaced by SSH or Secure Shell. But Telnet was the first one. So we always talk about Telnet. And then we always say, SSH is the one that we're going to end up using because it's the Secure Shell protocol. So with that, we get an encrypted channel. So it makes a tunnel in between the computers that provides the security that Telnet doesn't have. So Windows operating systems, we have RDP, remote desktop. So that can, that can serve as that. Previously, before I was at Rock Valley, I was basically a director of technology for a school system. And if I walked from my office across campus, I would get caught, and it was all indoors. So I would get caught by multiple people that would always be asking questions about their computers, or they'd have something broken or some problem. And so I was just getting into the habit of remoting into everybody's computers. So I'd use remote desktop protocol. And I actually had that set up through Windows. So SSH or RDP can be used when your vendor supports system software on your network. So that might be used. So the support technician can use those services to fix your computer. And so it'll serve up that desktop. It might even give a command line depending on the company or the technician. So it can do a lot for you. I mean, some of you might have done that and used some online RDP programs. So if you go into remote desktop, and so you can remote in, and you can get Chrome remote desktop. You got Microsoft remote desktop. TeamViewer was the one that I was thinking of. Is if you go online and you go to TeamViewer, you can actually I've done this before. I've had my grandma where I need to remote into her computer, or I had different relatives and I'd have them do the free download, and then I can go in and you can see their computer screen. So, you just want to make sure that you're the one that sets it up and that you have or helps them set it up, and that you have all of the settings set correctly and that it's, secure. So SMTP, so back to, these are the figures that were from before. So here's an example of SMTP for a mail protocol. And the sender is going to send the information, goes to a server. The sender's mail server is then going to communicate with the receiver's mail server to give the information to the receiver. So we've got multiple servers that it's going to go through. And then remote desktop, this is just showing somebody else's desktop. So you've got your desktop here, and then you've got another screen that shows somebody else's desktop. And then there's a little note here that says, because they can be accessed from the outside local network, remote access servers have strict security measures. Because, you don't want, we're looking at somebody's computer and we can make all sorts of changes, and, we can see all of that information and we can make changes. So we want to make sure that only authorized users can do that. We don't want just anybody doing that. Oh, the other thing that I didn't point out is there's all these self-checks. Let me scroll all the way back down. There's all these self-checks, and you can go through those. They're not graded, but you can go through those and you can see the answers. And like which of the following is a secure protocol, and then you just click on the answer and it'll show you the answer. And so SSH obviously is it, which is an example of an open source database management system. And I believe MySQL was the one that they brought up. And then which of these protocols could not be used to access a server in a nearby building? TLS. So we've got could not be used in a nearby building. So we've got. And then we go into 1-3, which is network hardware, and I'll talk about that in the next video.